What happens when a royal guest forgets that respect is a two-way street and turns a simple interview into an all-out war? In just 34 seconds, one comment would shatter the civility of daytime television and send shockwaves through the studio. The lights were hot. The audience was packed. The View was about to witness something nobody saw coming. Whoopi Goldberg sat at the table, her signature calm presence filling the studio. She had interviewed presidents, activists, and celebrities. She had seen it all, or so she thought. Prince Harry walked onto the stage with that familiar smile, waving to the crowd. The applause was loud. The energy was high. This was supposed to be a friendly conversation about his latest charitable work, but friendly was about to become a distant memory. Whoopi started with warmth. "Welcome to The View. We are so happy to have you here today." Harry nodded, settling into his chair. "Thank you for having me. So, let's talk about your foundation and the work you've been doing with veterans. It's really incredible what you've built." Harry leaned back, a slight edge creeping into his voice. "Yes, well, it's something I'm passionate about. Unlike some talk shows, we actually make a real difference in people's lives." The audience shifted. Whoopi's eyebrow raised just a fraction. She had been doing this long enough to catch the dig, but she stayed professional. "That's wonderful. I think a lot of people in media try to make a difference in their own ways. Can you tell us more about the programs you're running?" Harry waved his hand dismissively. "I could, but I'm not sure your audience would really understand the complexities of what we do. No offense, but daytime television viewers aren't exactly known for their depth." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Whoopi's co-hosts exchanged glances. This was not going according to plan. Whoopi kept her composure, her voice steady. "Actually, our viewers are incredibly engaged and informed. They care deeply about the issues we discuss. Maybe you could give them some credit." Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm just being honest. I've done interviews with serious journalists, people who ask real questions. This feels a bit beneath that level, if I'm being frank." The tension in the room became thick enough to cut. Whoopi leaned forward, her patience wearing thin but her professionalism still intact. "Well, I've interviewed some of the most important figures in modern history. I think we can handle a conversation about charity work. So, why don't we get back to the veterans you're helping?" Harry shrugged. "Fine, but let's be clear. When I talk about helping veterans, I'm talking about real action. Not just sitting around a table talking about problems like what happens on shows like this." Another wave of shock went through the audience. One of the co-hosts tried to jump in, but Whoopi raised her hand gently. This was her show. She would handle this. "I'm curious, Harry. You came on this show knowing what it was. You knew who we were. So why are you here if you think so little of what we do?" Harry's face hardened. "Publicity, obviously. My team said it would be good for the foundation. But honestly, I'm starting to wonder if they were wrong. This is exactly the kind of superficial nonsense I've been trying to get away from." Whoopi's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. Superficial. That's an interesting word coming from someone who has built a career on their last name and family drama. The audience gasped louder this time. Harry's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? How dare you? You have no idea what I've been through. The scrutiny, the pressure, the constant attacks from the media. You sit here in your comfortable studio, pretending to understand struggle." Whoopi did not flinch. "I've faced plenty of struggle in my life. I've worked for everything I have, and I've never insulted the people who gave me a platform to speak. That's called gratitude." Harry stood up slightly in his chair, his voice rising. "Gratitude? You want me to be grateful? I'm a prince. I don't need to be grateful for anything. You should be grateful I even agreed to come on this show." The studio fell silent. Every eye was on Whoopi. She sat back, folded her hands, and spoke with quiet authority. "Let me tell you something. I don't care if you're a prince, a president, or the Pope himself. When you come into my house, you show respect. Not just to me, but to these women at this table, and to every single person in this audience. Harry scoffed. Your house. This is a television studio owned by a massive corporation. You don't own anything here. Whoopi's eyes flashed. I've earned my place here through decades of work. What have you earned besides a title you were born into? Harry's face turned red. I've served my country. I've been in combat. I've sacrificed more than you could ever imagine. And that's admirable, Whoopi said, her voice softening just slightly. Truly it is. But that doesn't give you the right to come here and disrespect everyone around you. Service means humility. Where's yours? Harry stood up fully now, his voice sharp and cutting. I don't have to listen to this. I don't have to sit here and be lectured by someone who makes a living gossiping and chattering about celebrities. Whoopi stood up too, matching his energy, but not his anger. Then don't. You know where the door is. The audience was frozen. The cameras kept rolling. This was live television at its most raw. Harry pointed at Whoopi, his hand shaking with anger. You are exactly what's wrong with American media. Loud, opinionated, and completely out of touch with real issues. Whoopi stepped closer to the table, her voice rising for the first time. And you are exactly what people hate about privilege. You think your title makes you better than everyone else. You think you can say whatever you want without consequences. Well, not here. Not on my show. Harry's voice cracked with rage. Your show? This isn't even a real show. It's a joke. You're all jokes, sitting here day after day, pretending your opinions matter. One of the co-hosts tried to interject. Harry, maybe we should just take a breath and... Don't, Harry snapped, cutting her off. Don't patronize me. I'm so tired of being handled and managed by people who think they know better. Whoopi raised her voice again, commanding the space. Nobody is managing you. But if you can't have a civil conversation, then you need to leave. We invited you here in good faith. We gave you a platform, and you've done nothing but spit in our faces. Harry laughed bitterly. Good faith? You invited me here to boost your ratings. Let's not pretend this was about anything noble. You wanted a royal on your show, and you got one. Well, congratulations. I hope it was worth it. Whoopi crossed her arms. What's not worth it is watching a grown man throw a tantrum because he can't handle a simple conversation. You want to talk about maturity? Look in the mirror. Harry's voice dropped to a cold, venomous tone. I've been dealing with people like you my entire life. People who think they can talk to me however they want because they have a microphone and a camera. I'm done with it. I'm done with all of you. Whoopi did not back down. Then go. Seriously. If you're so done, there's the exit. Nobody is forcing you to stay. Harry grabbed his microphone and pulled it off his lapel, the wire tangling for a moment before he yanked it free. You know what your problem is, Whoopi. You've forgotten what it's like to have real power. You've settled for this little corner of mediocrity. The insult hung in the air like poison. Whoopi's co-hosts looked horrified. The audience was silent, barely breathing. Whoopi's voice was ice. Real power isn't about a crown or a title. Real power is earning respect. And you just lost all of yours. Harry threw the microphone onto the table with a loud clatter. I don't need your respect. I don't need anyone's respect here. You're all beneath me. That was the final straw. Whoopi turned to someone off camera. Get him out of here! Now! Security personnel appeared from the wings, moving quickly, but professionally. Harry's eyes went wide with disbelief. You're kicking me off? You're actually kicking me off your show? Whoopi nodded, her face set in stone. Yes, I am. You've been rude, disrespectful, and insulting from the moment you sat down. I gave you chances to turn it around. You chose not to. So yes, you need to leave. Harry looked around wildly, as if expecting someone to come to his defense. Nobody moved. The audience remained silent. His co-hosts looked away. "This is unbelievable," Harry said, his voice shaking. "Do you know who I am?" Whoopi's response was swift and cutting. "I know exactly who you are. And right now, you're someone who needs to leave my stage." Security reached Harry's side. They didn't touch him, but their presence was clear. He needed to go. Harry's face twisted with anger and something else. Embarrassment, maybe. Or shock that someone had actually stood up to him. "You'll regret this," he said, his voice low and threatening. "You have no idea what you've just done." Whoopi did not waver. "The only thing I regret is wasting our time on someone who clearly wasn't interested in a real conversation." Harry turned to the audience, perhaps hoping for support. He found none. The faces staring back at him were shocked, disappointed, and in some cases, angry. "Fine," he spat. "I didn't want to be here anyway. This show is garbage. You're all garbage." He started walking toward the exit, security following at a respectful distance. But he could not resist one final jab. He turned back to face Whoopi. "You know what's sad? You actually think you matter. You think this little show gives you importance. But in the real world, nobody cares what you think." Whoopi stood tall, unmoved by his words. "In the real world, people care about respect and decency. Two things you clearly know nothing about. Goodbye, Harry." Harry's mouth opened, as if to respond, but no words came out. He had nothing left to say. With one last furious look, he turned and walked off the stage. The studio doors closed behind him with a heavy thud that echoed through the silent space. For a long moment, nobody moved. The audience sat frozen. The co-hosts stared at the empty chair where Harry had been sitting moments before. Whoopi returned to her seat slowly, taking a deep breath. She looked directly into the camera. "Well," she said, her voice steady despite everything that had just happened. "That was unexpected." The audience erupted. Not in cheers exactly, but in a release of tension that had been building since the argument began. Some people applauded. Others just exhaled loudly, as if they had been holding their breath. One of the co-hosts leaned over. "Are you okay?" Whoopi nodded. "I'm fine, but let me be clear about something." She looked back at the camera. "We welcome all kinds of guests on this show. We have tough conversations. We disagree. We debate. But we do it with respect. And when someone comes into our space and disrespects not just us, but you, our audience, then they don't get to stay. It's that simple." The applause grew louder. People were standing now, showing their support for how Whoopi had handled the situation. Another co-host spoke up. "I cannot believe what we just witnessed. Did that really just happen?" Whoopi smiled slightly. "Oh, it happened. And honestly, I'm not sorry it did. Because it showed exactly who that person really is, behind all the carefully crafted public image." The energy in the studio began to shift from shock to something else. Pride, maybe. Or vindication. The audience had just watched their host stand up to someone who thought his status made him untouchable. "You know," Whoopi continued, "I've been in this business a long time. I've seen people try to use their fame, their power, their connections to push people around. And every single time, the answer is the same. Not here. Not on this show. Not ever." The crowd roared their approval. This was why they loved Whoopi. This was why they tuned in day after day. Because she did not back down. She did not compromise her values. And she certainly did not let anyone disrespect her or her audience. One co-host was shaking her head in disbelief. "The way he talked about our viewers, like they're not smart enough to understand what he does. That was incredibly insulting." Whoopi nodded firmly. "Absolutely. And that's what really got me. You can insult me all day. I've got thick skin. But when you insult the people who support this show, the people who tune in because they want to engage with important topics, that's where I draw the line." The audience cheered again, louder this time. They felt seen. They felt defended, and they appreciated it. I mean, let's be real, another co-host chimed in. He came on this show voluntarily. Nobody forced him. His team reached out to us. And then he acts like he's doing us some huge favor by being here? That's not how this works. Whoopi laughed, a real laugh this time. Right? The audacity of it all. Coming onto someone's show and then claiming you're too good for it. If you really felt that way, why show up at all? Publicity, a co-host said flatly. He said it himself. He was using us. And when you tried to have a genuine conversation, he couldn't handle it. Whoopi leaned forward, her elbows on the table. That's the thing about respect. It has to go both ways. You can't demand it without giving it. You can't expect people to treat you like royalty while you treat them like servants. The crowd was completely with her now. Every head nodded in agreement. Every face reflected support and understanding. And let's talk about that last comment, Whoopi said, her voice taking on a sharper edge, about how nobody cares what I think. That was his parting shot, his big finale. And you know what? It just proved my point. Someone who truly has confidence in themselves does not need to tear others down on their way out the door. One co-host raised her hands. Can we also acknowledge that you gave him so many chances? You tried to redirect the conversation. You tried to keep things professional. He was the one who kept escalating. I did, Whoopi agreed, because that's what you do. You don't immediately go nuclear. You give people the opportunity to course correct. But he did not want to correct. He wanted to fight. And if someone wants to fight, they can do it somewhere else. The audience stood again, applauding even louder than before. This was not just about one dramatic moment. This was about standing up for principles, about maintaining dignity in the face of disrespect. Whoopi waved her hand, trying to calm the applause. Okay. Let's not spend our whole show on this. We have other guests. We have other topics. And we are not going to let one person's bad behavior derail what we do here. But the energy had shifted. What could have been a disaster had become something else entirely. A moment of clarity. A reminder of what The View stood for and what Whoopi Goldberg represented. As the show moved on to its next segment, the audience remained energized. They had just witnessed something rare in modern television. Someone with power standing up to someone with privilege. Someone with earned respect refusing to be diminished by someone with inherited status. The cameras captured every moment. The microphones picked up every word. And somewhere, Prince Harry was probably realizing that titles and status mean nothing when you forget the basic rules of human decency. Whoopi had handled it perfectly. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. Not with aggression, but with assertion. She had given him every opportunity to be better, and when he refused, she had done what needed to be done. The message was clear. On The View, respect is non-negotiable. Civility is expected, and nobody, regardless of who they are or where they come from, gets to treat people as less than. As the show continued, Whoopi glanced at the empty chair one more time. Then she turned back to her co-hosts, smiled, and moved forward. Because that's what professionals do. They handle the crisis, they stand their ground, and then they get back to work. The audience would remember this day for a long time. The day a prince forgot his manners, and a host reminded him that real power comes from respect, not from a royal title. The day someone walked onto a stage thinking they were untouchable and walked off having learned a valuable lesson. It was television at its most unscripted, drama at its most real, and a perfect example of what happens when entitlement meets someone who simply will not tolerate it. Whoopi Goldberg had faced down bigger challenges in her career. She had overcome obstacles that would have broken lesser people, and she had done it all while maintaining her integrity and her principles. So when a guest decided to test those principles, the outcome was inevitable. Not because Whoopi needed to prove anything, but because some lines simply cannot be crossed. The show would go on. Other guests would come and go. But this moment would stand as a reminder. A reminder that respect is earned, that courtesy matters, and that nobody is so important that they can forget how to treat other human beings. As the cameras finally cut to commercial, the studio buzzed with conversation. People talked over each other, still processing what they had witnessed, still amazed at how quickly civility had dissolved and how firmly Whoopi had responded. In that moment, she was not just a talk show host. She was a defender of dignity, a guardian of respect, and someone who understood that allowing bad behavior to go unchecked is the same as endorsing it. The lesson was simple, but powerful. You can have all the titles in the world. You can come from the most prestigious family. You can have wealth and fame and connections. But none of that matters if you don't know how to treat people with basic human decency. And if you forget that lesson, there will always be someone like Whoopi Goldberg ready to remind you. Firmly, clearly, and without apology. The argument lasted only minutes, but its impact would resonate far longer. Because sometimes the most important moments are the ones that expose who people truly are, beneath their carefully constructed images. Prince Harry had walked onto that stage expecting deference. He had assumed his status would shield him from accountability, and he had believed that he could say whatever he wanted without consequence. He was wrong, and Whoopi Goldberg had made sure everyone understood why.